The rocket launcher has been an iconic video game weapon for longer than I've been alive, and in my opinion, Team Fortress 2 has the most fun and dynamic rocket launcher mechanics in gaming history. Capable of not only significant damage, but also supreme mobility, learning to use soldiers' primary weapons is key to finding success in the Badlands. But with 9 options to choose from, which one should you equip? Well, if you were in a hurry, the answer is either the stock rocket launcher or the original, but if you stick around, I will rank the rest and give my reason for the ranking, as well as situations where a specific unlock might be the right tool for the job. For the sake of brevity, I will be including the original in this section because it is almost identical to the stock rocket launcher, with the exception of the rockets firing at the center of your screen instead of the right-hand side. Anyways, the good old reliable stock rocket launcher is an excellent baseline for Soldier's primary slot. It excels at everything without making any big sacrifices. If you want solid damage, reliable movement, a low skill floor, all while retaining a skill ceiling so high you won't even get close after 1500 hours of playing the class, look no further than stock. Even though the mangler 5000 and the black box function almost identically to stock, the rocket launcher does not have the glaring weaknesses that are bundled with these unlocks due to their downsides. The reason I believe stock is a cut above the other launchers that I haven't mentioned yet is because of its superb AoE. Again, the black box and the mangler have the same AoE, but I will get to why they aren't as good in just a bit. Despite having damage that is theoretically inferior to the direct hit and the beggar's bazooka, in practice humans are not perfect, and having more generous area of effect means that you will deal more damage in the long run. Obviously, Splash doesn't just impact single target damage, but also gives you the ability to hit multiple targets at once. This is incredibly useful when dealing with groups of enemies or when defending a choke point. The latter of which is a pillar of the tf2 metagame that I have discussed ad nauseum in other videos, so I will spare the details here. Trust me, Splash is just really, really important. Another thing that a lot of people don't mention is that AoE is useful for dealing with turtling engineers because you can attempt to splash multiple buildings at once, as well as the engineer all with one well-placed rocket. Because it's a stock item, there are no weaknesses listed on the item card, however I would consider a low ammo count, slow reload speed, and slow projectile speed all to be downsides of this weapon. Some unlocks buff some of these stats, but at the cost of other things. Long story short, learning to play around the drawbacks of stock is the most practical way to be an effective soldier. In second place is the mangler 5000. Almost everything I said about the stock rocket launcher and the original is true for this laser gun thingamajig. The main difference can be seen on the item card. The item cannot random crit, crits will be turned into mini crits, no ammo is required, and most importantly, rockets will only deal 20% damage to engineer buildings. The last bit is the main reason I never bother to run the mangler because engineers with a sentry up become a pretty hard counter to you. If you're in a server where there are not any engies on the other team, first of all, please send me the IP address so I can join you in Paradise, and secondly, in this case, the mangler is pretty much a straight upgrade. The only time when the other downsides come into play is if you have a crit screen medic who is unaware of the no crit stat and Ubers you anyways, which is exceedingly rare in my experience. Not having to worry about running out of ammo is a very nice upside, but the main draw is the charge shot. Partially because you get slowed down when charging the shot, and also because it consumes all 4 of your loaded rockets, this is really only useful for long-range spam. However, because the shot mini-crits and deals fire damage, you are able to one-shot light classes and even medics at very long ranges, provided they aren't overhealed or they are not able to grab a pack before they die to the afterburn. I know that this is a pretty strong ability, and it was definitely abused in competitive play before the item got banned. However, in casual, I find charge shots to be both gimmicky and risky because it depletes your entire clip. While the no crits downside rarely comes into play, in my games with this item, I immediately notice the building damage nerf. I already find Engineer obnoxious enough as it is, so I can't sacrifice the ability to deal with them myself for a few small upsides. And yes, I am aware that the charge shot stuns sentries, but if I am going to use 4 rockets on a sentry, I would much rather just kill the sentry with 4 rockets instead of just stun it. The beggar's bazooka comes in third, and while some might argue it is Soldier's best launcher, I simply cannot put it above the previous 2 entries. That being said, I do absolutely adore this item, and I think it is extremely good at what it does. I won't reiterate all this item's stats for the sake of time, so if you don't know how this weapon works, go check out my guide video on it. Anyways, to summarize, the Beggars is very good at offense. I would argue that it makes rocket jumping even stronger. Both the misfire and the barrage mechanic allow for insane acceleration that isn't possible with stock. You can still go fast with stock, but it isn't quite as explosive as what it is with Beggars jumping. Additionally, when used correctly, the barrage mechanic can reduce your time to kill significantly, which when combined with the aforementioned movement mechanics, you can become a human heat-seeking missile. This offensive playstyle is incredibly rewarding when pulled off correctly, and it is some of the most fun I've had playing this game ever. However, this unlock is not without shortcomings, which happen to be the reason it falls firmly into third place. Outside of bombing in, the Beggar struggles with long-range spam and defensive play. And by struggle, I mean it literally can't spam things at long range because of the random deviation. Spamming out sentries is a slog, the reduced area of effect can be devastating, and the item chews through ammo very quickly. Furthermore, the movement potential of this weapon isn't always realized because of unforgiving map geometry such as low skyboxes or claustrophobic choke points. Basically, stock and cow mangler are much more well-rounded items that will be stronger in more situations. However, in certain contexts, the Beggar's bazooka is the strongest primary available to soldier. Ah yes, the direct hit. I am positive that some of you are disagreeing with my decision to put this item in 4th place, and to be honest, I don't have much of a counter-argument other than, in my own anecdotal experience, this item tends to underperform the previous entries. On paper, the direct hit is a huge upgrade from stock and the strongest soldier primary. Faster projectile speed allows you to hit more directs, and directs deal significantly more damage than stock, enough to one-shot light classes at close ranges. In practice, I find that the direct hit's upsides rarely make up for the loss of splash damage and all the boons that come with it. With the direct hit, crowd control is essentially impossible, holding choke points becomes significantly harder, and your ability to sneak in extra splash damage using props, walls, floors, and ceilings is reduced to 0. Gone are the times you will miss a direct rocket but still deal 60 damage because of splash. Instead, you do 0. This is a big deal. I honestly think that stock rockets are almost as good at dealing single target damage as a direct hit because of splash. I am sure there are direct hit fans that are screaming skill issue, and you are honestly half correct. However, I think you are underestimating the usefulness of splash damage and the importance of controlling choke points. The DH might appear to be a direct upgrade, and in a world where some perfect anime protagonist plays tf2 and never misses ever, then it would be. But it's not. Of course, 4th place isn't bad. I think the direct hit is still a great choice, and there are still times where I swap to it, dealing with cooperative engineering, for example. Alright, putting the block box in 5th place might be a little bit controversial because I think the general opinion of this weapon is that it is quite strong. Similar to some of the previous entries, I believe that this unlock is actually strong and is very good at what it does. However, because of its -1 rocket downside, it ends up being a one-trick pony. I will say that this item is similar to the Beggars, where I think in some contexts it is the best launcher, however it is extremely dependent on map geometry and the other team's playstyle. Losing one rocket is very painful and makes aggressive plays much less viable. Of course, you could run a shotgun or something to make up for having less ammo, but as most players have caught on, this item combos well with one of the batters since you will be going for a lot of conservative spam damage to get the most out of the health on kill upside of the item. So the block box ends up in a weird spot where it is really good at playing like a coward and is just kind of bad at everything else Soldier likes to do. It's not that you can't bomb in with the block box, but the tiny clip size makes it hard to actually commit to shooting 2 or 3 rockets before you have to jump away. For this reason, I have to put it lower than the launchers above it because, while items like the Cow Mangler and the Beggar's Bazooka struggle in certain scenarios as well, I still feel like their downsides are less punishing and the upsides better justify the inherent risk of equipping the item. I think there could be an argument that this is a matter of playstyle since I tend to prefer aggressive plays, so if you disagree with the placement you can go ahead and let me know in the comments. The airstrike was probably the hardest for me to rank out of all 9 soldier primaries, and I do feel like the weapon has potential to move higher on this ranking, but for now I can't justify putting it any higher. It is possible to pull off some crazy jumps and sinks with this item, which can be devastating if you're playing a map where it is easy to predict your opponent's positioning. Complicating things even further is the fact that the airstrike has a snowballing mechanic, meaning you can get up to 8 rockets in a clip if you manage to get 4 kills without dying. This mechanic is really fun when you run the base jumper because you can literally be a one-man airstrike. However, hitting aware players with such a barrage usually requires a less floaty bomb. I think the main appeal of this gun is its ability to fast bomb and sink rockets onto a player, which is very reminiscent of the beggar's bazooka. However, unlike the beggars, this thing comes with a hefty minus 15% damage penalty, which in tandem with its minus 10% explosion radius, means that your rockets feel more like Nerf bullets against tankier targets. I think the idea is that you will have more ammo once you snowball a bit, meaning that dealing with healthier targets is a matter of just spamming more rockets. However, like a certain item that is up next on the list, more rockets doesn't always mean more success. So, while I think this item has unrealized potential and could be the next Beggar's Bazooka where everybody realizes how good it is, I find it to be underwhelming given my current understanding of the weapon. Speaking of rockets that feel like Nerf bullets, in 7th place we have the Liberty Launcher. Every single upside of this item seems absolutely incredible. You got faster projectile speed, an extra rocket in your clip, and a rocket jump damage reduction. But none of it makes up for the fact that you do no damage. Unlike all of the other launchers, including the final one I have not gotten to yet, this thing just feels like it doesn't know what it wants to be. Does it want to be a movement focus item? Well, the rocket jumper does that better. Maybe it's meant for hitting directs. No, the direct hit is a thing. Perhaps this thing is meant to farm banner from a safe distance? Oh wait, the black box has the weapon of choice for the cowardly since it doesn't have a huge damage nerf. You know, the thing that actually builds the banners. Not to mention, what is the point of having 5 rockets if you're gonna sit back all game? Really, the only thing this weapon is good at is rocking a shotgun, which helps make up for your lack of damage by allowing you to shoddy swap and clean up after hitting 2 good rockets. But if you were using stock, those 2 rockets probably would have just done the job in the first place. And speaking of stock, if you want to run shotgun, stock is probably a better option anyways because the Liberty Launcher's minus 15% blast damage reduction isn't really that impactful. In Team Fortress 2, being a generalist is usually a good thing. Just look at any class tier list. But it just doesn't work out for the Liberty Launcher, in my opinion. I think most of you probably saw this coming a mile ago, but the rocket jumper is Soldier's worst primary. Not the least fun, but the worst. It does no damage, so I have to put it here even if it enables some of Soldier's most fun playstyles. Yeah, nothing much to say here, it just does literally no damage. Anyways, that's my rating, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video.